let's just get in there. Just introduce yourself, young lady. But what we're going to talk about today, before I forget, because I got all carried away looking at all these beauties, we're talking about today is dating after divorce. Okay, now this can apply to dating after a long relationship, or any kind of relationship that had been there for a long time and kind of defined you. Maybe you lived together, maybe you just were dating for a very long time. That can be really hard to break those long bonds, the connections that we make in that time, the identities that become enmeshed, the lives, the habits we create. It can be really, really harrowing. So whether you're married, never been married, mating or marriage, doesn't really matter. Mating is just marriage without a contract, by the way. So basically we're going to be discussing that today, and lucky for you, three of us on this call have been married, divorced. One of us is married again, and one of us has been in a long-term relationship, and so she can definitely relate to how you would feel at this time. So I'm really excited to get into today's one. I'm gonna let Yvonne kick us off today and tell us, what it's like dating after divorce, and what are maybe the one thing that you can share with us today, even though I know there are a million, that a woman can really do to avoid making a lot of the mistakes that perhaps you made.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me. Dating after divorce. Oh, dear, dear, dear. That, when I think back on that, it fills me with shudder and dread because it wasn't a good experience. It was back in the day where there was no Black Swan Relationship Academy. There was no, aunties around to help you to navigate your way back out there. It had to be a lot of trial and error. There were a lot of things that you thought, yay, this is good, and you did it, and then only to find out maybe not. So a couple of things that I did that I, now knowing what I know, would definitely not have done it. And the one thing, and I say this with all sincerity, don't date anyone immediately you move out or he moves out, whatever the situation is. Don't think 2 weeks after is a great time to find someone else. It is not. Trust me, it isn't. And a funny story, I was out shopping with Chengi a few weeks ago, and we're walking down the road, minding our own business, and this gentleman passed me, and I thought, I know that. And we both must have thought it, because we both of us looked around. I said hello, he said hello. We did the usual thing, quick hug, how are you? Fine, you? Good. And he went off, and Chengi said, who's that? And I said, I dated him. I don't even think it was 2 months. I dated him immediately after my divorce hadn't even come through yet, but I knew the marriage was over. I dated him. And when I looked at him, I thought to myself, you must have been so desperate. And I was, because you know how it is. No, let's call a spade a spade. When you've been with someone, I was with my husband. I've known him since I was, 15. I married him at 21. I left him at 32. I'd never known anyone, never been on another date before or anything. So here I was, single, living at my mum's. My sister came and said, let's go out. Why not? Went out, met this guy. Don't even think it lasted 2 months. But it was the worst thing that I could have done, because you know what I was looking for? I was looking for validation in the wrong place. I was looking for somebody who would like me again, because I was beating up on me so badly. I didn't think anyone or anything would ever want to be with me again. So when this person asked me out, I knew this wasn't going to go anywhere, but somebody liked me in that moment. And all I wanted was really validation of that. So whatever it is that you think, you know what, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go back out there, I'm not saying that you can't, because at the end of the day, we're all adults. Nobody can tell you don't. But what I'm going to ask you is, are you sure you're ready for the hit it and quit it? Because it wasn't even that. Are you ready for the disappointment that is going to cause you because you're not ready for it? Are you ready for the rabbit hole that you're going to so run into that when this thing is finished, you're just going to add more on top of what you've already gone through that is not going to help you in any way, shape, or form? And what that then does is it prolongs your getting over it, prolongs the heartache. And all you're doing is just adding, you've lifted up the carpet and you've swept. Now that has become your own statue in your heart. And all you're doing is just adding to it to the point where it's tripping you over every time you go somewhere. So, one of my advice to anyone out there, start doing the work first before you think, what, let me find Johnny or let me go out and find someone. If you decide that, I've done it, I'm ready to go, then yippee. If that's what you want to do, then when you're ready to find that person, just make sure that you know what it is you want. Make sure you know how to communicate your needs. Not only do you know how to communicate your needs, you know what you want. Most importantly, you know what you don't want. And because you know what you don't want, you're not going to be confused. Nothing worse out there than somebody who thinks, what, any port in a storm. And then when that boat shows up, you realize, but it's just another sinking ship. I was on one before I jumped off, and now I've gone back on one again. So make sure that you know what it is you want, know what where your boundaries are, know the things that you're prepared to negotiate, know the things that you're not prepared to negotiate, what your core needs are. And the only way that you're going to do that is when you start doing the work.
And that's the end of the video. Might as well just go home. Like, honestly,
No,
like,
did I do wrong?
After this, Yvonne.
Did I do wrong?
No, I'm saying, what am I supposed to add after this? You've said
Sorry.
everything as Mr. said. It's like, let's just end the video. Let's just go home. But I really love what you said about taking the time out. So I have, I think the main thing for me was regret. It was especially after my marriage didn't last very long, but it took forever to get divorced. And like, it was the back and forth and everything going on. And in that time, instead of getting work done on myself, I really dug a really deep hole about my own self-worth. So to an extent that you start to think maybe marriage is not for me. You start to think maybe, you know what, I'm just, because again, there's this cultural perception of single mothers. There's so many things that happen with single mothers, like they're just sort of as strong, they don't need anybody, they don't, and you actually really dig yourself into that hole. So I spent the last 18 years just being a single mother. I spent the last 18 years not even wanting to date, because I think the first time I dated was when I think my daughter was about 14, like really properly dating, going out on dates. So it was never really anything thought out, which is saying, for me, it was more a story of regret. I would do anything to avoid the regret, but it was there, and I never addressed it. Never addressed my role as well in the relationship. And I think sometimes before you actually go out there, try to find a new love and heal your heart, is really addressing the reasons why the divorce happened in the first place. And I regret not having done it sooner, but thank God I've done it now. It's when because divorce can happen, but all of us have a part to play.
Yes.
I was not patient. I was the one who wanted things done, like, need to do it now. If it's not done now, I'm mad at you. It's like when you really look back at yourself and you think, oh my God, why would you even marry that girl, kind of thing. And it's taking accountability of who you are and who you were in that marriage. And when you go into dating, sometimes you will get the question, so what happened in your marriage? It's owning it. Because you are going to come across people who wonder, like, what is a beautiful woman like you not married and divorced. Like, what happened? Like, why would anyone want to divorce you? Is the question that you'd get. And it's owning up to like, I just wasn't ready. I just wasn't the kind of woman you'd want to marry. Had a lot of issues to deal with. And for you to be able to own things like that is, again, working with a coach, really taking accountability for your own space within the relationship that's gone. So when you've dealt with that relationship, then now you're ready to date. So I'm saying, even like when you're saying don't rush into dating after the divorce, so this is what you do during that time. Work on you, work on the reasons why that divorce fell apart. And as much as would love to blame the husband, would love to blame the wife, we all had a part to play. We'll all have a part to play in that particular relationship. If the person was a narcissist, we would have seen that in our dating times and would have not married them, right? So we had that responsibility to see that, okay, is this the marriage for me or not? So as much as we like to always blame the other partner, we have a role to play. So before even getting into the dating game, to round it off, before getting into the dating game, while you're not rushing to date the next person, take the time out to be accountable, understand your new core needs now, because you're going to have new core needs, because you would want someone who is okay with marrying someone who has been divorced, because not everyone is. I need to make sure that I'm okay with marrying someone who's okay with me having a child. It's all of those things that you now have to assess, and redefining what love actually means. The story of divorce is always because we didn't take time out to define what love means, what marriage means. And it's not just the white dress and the event, it's not the actual ceremony, but we didn't take time to really address what does it mean for you to be committed to someone fully. And that way, when you're taking your time out to get to know yourself, you're able to then assess, okay, this is what I'm going to need so that I can heal and then find love again and again and again and again.
Powerful. So powerful. Both of you made such great points. And I'm going to go on to Nadine in just a minute, but I want to leave you two with a question that I would love for you to answer right after Nadine is done. Because I am sitting here, I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, so what do we do with our sex drive while we're not dating? Okay. I'm just putting it out there because a lot of people, women have come out of marriages where, you know, sexual intimacy was happening on the regular, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
here you are, you've been getting it on the regs, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, but you know, your body was getting some needs met. And now Coach Yvonne says, don't you go running into the other man's arms. And, you know, Unique is like, let's work on it. Let's take the time. You know, I want you to think about that and come up with with something for our audience. But I'm really interested in, Nadine, your story. You weren't married, but you were definitely in a long-term relationship. Would you like to share? Feel free to share, and what you would do different.
So with me, it was a different story. I met my ex, and it was first boyfriend. You know, we broke up, got together, and then started living together. And we were living together common law for several years, right? So to me, it felt like a marriage. In my mind, I was in that attitude, well, we're together, we're going to eventually get married. And when I did walk away from the relationship, I think it destroyed my attitude and things, because he was my first boyfriend. I didn't know how to navigate. I didn't know how to deal with relationships. I didn't have the experience. So when I left it, I made a decision. You know, I've heard from Yvonne, I heard from Unique about taking the time, but I did the opposite. I ended up deciding I'm just not gonna be in relationships anymore. I'm just gonna be by myself, and you know, and just do my, you know, do me and focus on church, do everything. I just, to solve the pain and not deal with things, I'm just not gonna date, which I think it's okay to take time, but it just ruined my confidence. And because it was like the relationship that I only had context with, it was very hard to know how to navigate. So what I decided to do was just make the decision. So I did go to talk to therapy, but I wasn't focused on a relationship. It was more about getting dealing with other things in my life, not realizing I should jump into relationships. So I agree about taking the time to know yourself, but not making your own decision on what you need to do, because I just didn't date for years and years. thinking that would solve the problem. And it really ruined how I felt about myself, how I saw myself, thinking I wasn't worthy, wasn't good enough. And because I didn't have a lot of context to compare, I didn't know, I was scared that if I jumped into another relationship, would the same things happen to me? Would I make the same mistakes? So my solution, just don't date. And I think that's sometimes not the best approach. I think it has to be a balance, knowing yourself, knowing what you need to work on. And then when you're ready, going out there, but not taking 5, 6, 7, 8 years until I actually kind of stumbled into a black swan. And then that's when, I started, becoming a coach. But all these things I didn't know about before. And I was just in this little kind of cocoon. So I think that's the other angle to it. It's like you get so scared. It doesn't matter if you're in a common law relationship or a divorce. Sometimes you get so scared of actually going out there that you decide that I don't even want to try. And then you kind of hide away because you're like, I don't want to deal with the pain. I don't want to deal with the rejection. It doesn't, like, if it doesn't work out, the idea that it failed and it didn't work out, regardless of who left or what happened. And I think that's something to deal with too, right?
Absolutely. I love that you said that, because I was actually going to say that about my own divorce. And I think, I hope you don't mind me saying this. If you do, well, sorry. But I think that both of us, our story, there was some domestic violence involved. And I think that we have to pay attention to the conditions and the reasons for the divorce. And what I find is when women have come out of domestic abuse, and usually there's some domestic abuse, but it's not the kind of go to the shelter type in terms of physical abuse and kind of intense. Sometimes it's cheating and stuff like that, and that's still a degree of emotional abuse. But we're talking about that kind of abusiveness where you have to kind of pack your bags and do a runner kind of abuse, where if you said I wanted to leave, it would not be an option, if you understand. So I'm not minimizing anybody's story. I'm just simply saying when there's that kind of level of danger to it where you have to do a runner, which I believe was your case, Nadine, and mine. The feeling you have very strongly is I never, ever, 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 never, ever, ever want to be in a relationship ever again, right? That's a very kind of predominantly prevailing story. For me, it took about a year. And I am going to be segueing back here because what sent me into dating was my horniness send me into that story. So I think the danger of our position of I never want to date again is that you don't account for your body having its needs met. You don't account for your soul needing that connection, because one of the things I will always say is that whilst I don't miss that particular marriage, I did miss being a wife. I did miss the routine. I did miss the habits. I did miss the dignity, right? Because we don't talk about that after divorce, that when you are divorced, it's almost like your dignity stripped from you. You're now this unwed mother. You are now for the streets. The way men want to date you is hit and quit more than this was a woman that was cherished, that a man once upon a time found as valuable and important to commit to. That's not how men see you. They don't see you as this, what did that guy do to lose this? They just see you as discarded, as desperate, as needy. Other women kind of look at you some kind of way. In society, you just looked at as she's a failure, right? So we don't sort of account for any of that. And that's where our self-esteem starts to get hit and knocked, and that's where we need to start doing that work of identity. But I really wish there was Black Swan at the time. I really do. I wish Black Swan existed, and I think this is why it does exist, because there was, what do you do, where do you go from here? So you fall into a unique thing where I'll just become a mom. But then guess what? Mr. Tall, Dark and Handsome Sexy Man comes through with a come through, but you're ill-equipped because you've not been preparing. You don't know that these men are moving this way. You have no idea. And so back to Yvonne's point, heartbreak, right? Because the first guy, I just thought, like what we don't realize is when you get married or get into a relationship that's quite that's like your first relationship was serious and you guys became common law, you kind of you start to think like a married woman.
Yeah.
You think about the regularity of a man. You know, he's going to come home at 5, or that silly cow is not coming home at all, but at least he comes home. There's a system, whether he's cheating or misbehaving or being brutal or whatever he's doing, you have this: men stay with me, men marry me, men choose me for permanency. And then you're out here in these streets and you're moving like a wife in the dating streets, right? You're moving with the care, the nurture, I'll take care, what you did for your husband, you're out here doing it for some man because you don't have another prototype.
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, you are going to get the beat down of your life, because men in the dating streets, especially those who've been in there too long, right? They see wife type materials as walkovers, doormats, take advantage, use them, throw them away. They don't see them as precious, because these men are not men who don't marry, are men who genuinely struggle with identifying value, period. Right? That's why they're not married. It's not because they haven't met marriage material women. So it's really brutal. And if I had Black Swan, I would have had somebody to say, look, you don't need to date, but we can take you through a 3-month journey. 4 months is all we're asking of you, you know, to get you right, to get your mind right, to give you the game, to show you the game, to hold your hand through the dating process. And, you know, you can safely date. You can safely, you know, choose the right next person. Even if that next person is not your forever person, at least that person will not incur as much damage as randomly kind of foraging through. Now I'm going to go back to Yvonne or Unique, whoever wants to answer it first. And Unique, what are your thoughts about... Now, I want to say a disclaimer before the ladies speak. We're not just talking to Christian women. If you're a Christian woman, you know what your Bible says, just go with it. Go with what your pastor says. Go with what your convictions are. But we also know that as Christians, we are human too. And should you think, you know what, I know what Jesus says, okay, but I don't want to be for these streets. I really want to be a little bit more dignified in how I move forward. This is the answer that the ladies are giving us. They are not advocating for misbehavior. You have your convictions, you have your values. If you are steeped in them, if you believe in them and you believe they're important to you, hold on to those values. Still do the work, but hold on to those values. But if you find that holding on is tough, or you're not Christian and that's not your conviction, or you are Christian and it's not your conviction, whatever, this is the answer that we're looking for, okay? So this is not the two of them saying, you go do this, but this is, you know, so over to you, Unique.
I guess for me, it's really more about understanding your need, because some people, they'll need to have sex. Like, I need to have a physical body with me. I need it. It's not, and again, I said the whole disclaimer is about understanding your core needs and your values. So as a Christian woman, there are certain areas in which I will fall in. Before I got married, yes, I'd be like, no, I'd like sex before marriage. We're not doing that. But afterwards, when you're now divorced, like saying you've been in this regular pattern of your physical needs are being met, your mental needs are being met, your emotional needs are being met, and now you're single. There's, for us to be, the thing is, sex was built for women, right? We've always said that sex was really for women. We are the ones who can multiple orgasm. It regulates us in so many ways. So in order to avoid the frustration of the sexless, there are things you can do. There's meditation for one, which allows you to still your body and reconnect with your body. There is also toys. If we're going to have to throw it out there are toys that can help you get to that place. And again, as I think we need to kind of caveat this each and every single time, if you're not a Christian, it's okay, just switch off, come back later.
But you mean if you're a Christian, switch off?
Yeah, if it's not for you, it's not for you. Please understand that. And we always have to have an answer for women who are not of the faith as well. It's like, for them, it's not a big deal. It's not a conviction like that. They don't have those same values. But at the same time, they value the intimacy that a man brings. And it's in the vetting. So this is where you need to vet and always be very careful. Be ready to go and always get your sexual health in check. Always be ready to make sure that the person that you are involved with is doing the same. And I think even during SWAN Nation, there's a time when like you'll get women who are not looking for a serious relationship and just want something casual. And that is okay. If that is what you now want, it's okay. Because at every different stage of our lives, and look, I'll put my hand up. I used to have a casual thing some time ago. And that was the arrangement. That's why we all understood that we're just casual. And that's it. Like whether you call me, I'll call you, but that was the arrangement at the time. And feel not obliged to actually change your mind. You're allowed to change your mind and say, you know what, this is not working for me. Let's move on. Or even if the person now wants to get into a serious relationship, you can actually stop and have a conversation with them to see where this thing is going. Because all we're saying is learn to have your needs met in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Right. Learn to have all your needs met in a healthy way that doesn't damage yourself or the person that you're dealing with. Have the conversations, even if it is hard, because most men are dealing with women who want something casual but can't verbalize that I just want something casual. Because your energy will speak casual. Even if you say to yourself, oh no, I'm a marriage type woman, but then if you are within yourself saying, you know, I'm not going to get married ever again, your energy will read casual, right?
Mm.
And that is what you're going to get approached with. So it's a very difficult one to have conversations with in general, because it's really down to an individual. And as coaches, we have to be compassionate enough to understand that sometimes that need for physical intimacy outweighs our own personal values as coaches. And we have to be in a space where we provide spaces for women to actually come and talk to you and say, you know what, I'm struggling with the sex thing.
Yeah.
I need someone like now. And then you're able to talk them through that process. And look, we have there's so much available for you to use if a man is not what you want, or a physical body is not what you want. But if you do want a physical body, there are all those precautions that you have to take care of as well.
100%. What do you think, Yvonne? What's
my experience is so different. My husband was the first person I'd known, and my experiences after him are almost minute, that they're so not worth talking about. But you know, here's the thing, when you talk about Christian women, I wasn't even saved at the time when I was married. I wasn't saved. And so when I left him and I then got my own place, I got saved. And I mean, I got saved. I went gung-ho for God. I mean, I got saved. And there was this gentleman that I was seeing when I got saved, and I was at home one Saturday morning. I can see it in my head. And there was my door knocked. I opened it, and it was him. And I was praying when he came in. He looked at the Bible, looked at me, looked at the Bible, and said something like along the lines of, "Oh no, not another one." And I didn't get it. Genuinely did not understand it. And needless to say, within 10 minutes he had gone. And do you know, I will never forget this. Do you know what I was reading? Is it 2 Corinthians, where it talks about love is kind, love is patient? And that's what I was reading when he came in.
Wow.
And from that day until a few months before I married my husband, there was nobody in my life. Chengi met me single. For years, I sat there and waited, and I can put my hand on my heart. I remember talking to God and say, if I'm going to do this, then you're going to have to help me, because I'm not going to go out and look for, because it just wasn't me. I didn't have the language, the knowledge, the need for, I didn't want to know. I just wanted to be, in fact, though, there shouldn't be anybody else in my world. It should just be me and God, and that was it, nothing. And when I tell you, I mean, I got saved. I was in church, everything. There was no one around. And it was years later, something happened. I started talking to my husband again. It was to the point where this person, when I tell you the depth of loathing that I had for him, you could not believe it. If I'm in a conversation and somebody was talking about someone who was happened to name that, the hairs on the back of my head would stand up and I'd be looking, fist drawn, ready to go out and battle. And now that we've remarried, I can't wait for him to come through the door. You know, so God did a work, not just on me, but God did a work on both of us. And the time that we were apart, God did a work. And fortunately, or unfortunately, as the case may be, my sexual desire, all the time that I was with God, he took it away. Why? How? Don't ask me. But no, I was just there. Am I saying that's the right way to go? No. Am I saying everybody should do a me? Absolutely not. But you know what, as Unique said earlier, you do what is right and necessary for you. Because you know the thing about it, God knew my heart. And God knows that if anyone had come in during that time, I wasn't healed or whole or able to deal with them. And I would have made the wrong choice for a person. And I think God loves us so much that what he did for me was, because he knew I was broken, he knew that I was literally on my last leg. He then said, to preserve you, I'm going to do this for you because I have something I need you for. And so that's what he did. He preserved me and kept me in order for me to be here today and do what it is I do. If somebody says to me, what do you do for a job? I don't have a job, because a job means that you go out and you do. What I do is I have a calling, and my calling is helping to heal people as women or men, when they sit in front of me and they start telling me their story, and I'm able to say, you know what, I hear you, I know where you're coming from. And when you hear me say, I know where you're coming from, it means I've experienced it. It means I've been there, so I know what you're going through. Not only do I know what you're going through, look at me. And if he did it for me, then he can do it for you. So you know what? Do what is right for you. Do what's gonna make you, when you go to your bed at night and you lay down there, if you're gonna go to bed and you're gonna have recriminations about what you have done, you woulda, you coulda, or you shoulda, then maybe you should think about changing it. But if you're going to your bed at night and you're saying your prayers and you're thanking and worshiping God for whatever, then you go ahead and continue doing that. When your time is right, then God will know exactly what it is that he's going to do with you. So don't feel, oh, but I can't, oh, but I should, I shoulda. No. At the end of the day, you are going to work it out with God. It's not, oh, Unique said, Chengi said, Yvonne said, Nadine. No, it's you and God working it out. And whatever decision that you make with God, feel free, do what you want. And if you're going to do what it is you want, then as I'm not sure if it was Unique or Nadine said, own what you've done. Own it. Don't, can't own what you have done, because you know what owning something does is it sets you free. When you own it, shame cannot rear its ugly head. Own it, disappointment can't come knocking at your door and say, I've come. When you own it, you're able to pursue and go again and find what it is that you want. Don't sweep it under the carpet and let it, demoralize you, because when that happens, it doesn't serve anybody any purpose. All you do is sit here and you get older before your time.
Amen. Amen. Amen, Sister Vaughn. Amen. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Let's just all give glory to God. You know, I'm listening to Vaughn. I'm thinking every serious Christian who's serious about their walk with Jesus is like, yeah, go and tell
You
those
come
ones who are
here.
not serious about their walk with Jesus. Okay, about they're saying you can use toys and they're saying you can meditate. That's
No.
demonic. You must do
No.
Sister Yvonne did trusted the Lord, prayed and received grace.
That's not what I'm
Hallelujah.
saying.
And you know, I love that you were able to tell that story, because our stories will resonate with somebody.
Yes.
You know, for me, and you know, I'm gonna come to you, Nadine, right after this, because I know that there are people that you need to speak for as well. You know, I came into my marriage with a lot of sexual trauma. I was raised very much in church, and so it's a trauma I repressed. There was a lot of shame around it. There was a lot of guilt around it. There was a lot of pain around it. And so then I went through the church system, which only would accept a pure heart, right? And remember, a lot of this stuff is happening to a child, but you know in your soul you're not pure again. I didn't know who, I just knew I wasn't pure. And I strived to meet the standard of God and the church at the time. So if you ask me, I'll tell you that I was married a virgin, meaning that it's when I got married that I had consensual sexual relations. Okay.
Yeah.
Every other time was not consensual, or at least I wasn't within the age where one can know if they can consent or not. So I entered into my marriage very much with a broken sexuality, a broken identity. And I thought marriage would take the shame away, or would take the stuff away. But actually what happened is my dysfunctionality showed up in full bloom in my marriage. So during the whole course of my marriage, I was ice cold. Let's put it that way. Sexually, I didn't know why people wanted to have sex. I didn't understand why people were losing their rug over sex. Why? Right? I really had been told by the church, when you get married, it's going to be explosive. Sex in marriage, it's got like sprinkle dust in it, and it fixes everything, and it corrects everything. And if you do it in marriage, God's just gonna bless the marital bed and gonna fix it.
And how did that work out for you?
Okay. So when I left my marriage, had no intention of going down this road, but I really feel somebody's gonna heal from this.
Yeah.
When I left my marriage, I was like, sod that. Okay? Sod all of it. I was supposed to stay married. I was supposed to have the best sex life ever. While the other girls were having boys at school putting their hands down their bras, I was being a good Christian girl. While other girls were going out partying and clubbing, I was at home being a good Christian girl. If this is what I get for being a good Christian, so forget that, I'm out of here. And I was really in a place in my life where I was like, I am going to explore this, because I genuinely thought I was broken. I was broken, but not in the way I thought I was broken. I was broken from the trauma from my childhood, but I thought I was sexually broken. I thought that I couldn't perform sexually like other women. So I gave myself carte blanche. Okay. Thou shalt explore thy sexuality. Now, obviously, being a mother, I was a responsible one. I wasn't out here running around these streets. You know, I still have a very low body count, but I wasn't going to carry the guilt of church or Christianity or God. And I had this conversation with God. I was like, listen, I love you, but this is what we're getting ready to do. And that journey was so important to me. I would never take it back. No regrets, never take it back, because it helped me understand that my problem was never sexuality. You know, my problem was the stuff we come into marriage with. Yeah. And I think this is so ignored. So when we're sitting there with our little no fornication stick, right? with our little do not fornicate if you're a real Christian, we're doing ourselves a disservice. This is not about who believes what. We're not talking about doctrines of theology. What is in the word is in the word. We're not going to try and debate it. But God is a God of the journey. You don't get saved today, and if you were a smoker, the smoke just disappeared. There are a lot of people who get saved today and still smoke for the next 10 years, right? There's no promise that it's all just gonna go away. Some things are a journey. You could get born again as a drug addict, and God will take you on a journey where you'll find freedom 15 years from now. And there's still all of us sitting here and all of us watching, their journeys we're on that we've been on since the day we gave our heart to Jesus, and we're still on it. 40 years later, 30 years later, we're still battling that thing. But God is the God of a journey. So for me, I believe that your sexuality and your sexual story is a journey for you and God to journey together. And it won't start by trying to be a little goody and tick all the little church boxes and all of the Christianity boxes. It starts by acknowledging that I am damaged. It starts by acknowledging that this is my perception. It starts by the stories. And for me, being a healthy person sexually and as a human being is way more important than ticking any boxes from anybody. So make that mean what you want it to mean. Okay. But I'm saying that let us take a journey. And personally, if at that time I was doing sort that F off, I had a Black Swan Relationship Academy, and I said, look, I ain't trying to be celibate for nobody. I'm not trying to be abstinent for anybody, but I don't want to get my heart broken. I would have loved to have a Chengi, an Yvonne, a Nadine, a Unique on the other side of that journey, saying, you know what, let's help you do that safely. Let's help you select somebody who you can do that with safely and explore that sexual story with safely and be vulnerable with and authentic with and write a proper contract and make sure that everything is above board so that your heart and your body and to an extent your spirit is protected, right, whilst you take that journey. But I didn't have that, so I went and did what I had to do to survive, right, to cope or to and in that sad journey where I had to take it by myself with a lot of confusion. I got my heart broken a million times. I bonded with the wrong people. It was just very painful journey, and my journey continues. My journey continues to the point of my journey shall continue. And I promise you, it's going to be messy and it's going to be ugly, but the God I serve can handle my mess and my ugly, right? Maybe the Christians can't, and that's okay. The Christians don't have to, but God can. He can handle it all. So my thing is, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Your salvation, not mine. Don't try to work out mine. Okay, we're not going to try to work out my salvation here. I'm out here working it out with fear and trembling. Okay, I do mean it with fear and trembling, with reverence to God. I work out my journey. And so it's always so important for me that I never put myself out there and be like, I'm celibate, I'm abstinent. I'm not claiming these things to then forward disappoint my audience or disappoint my friends or disappoint the church. I am just out here saying I am working out my salvation with fear and trembling and reverence and dependence on God and complete surrender to him and grace to keep getting up if I have to. And that's my position. And I feel that it has served me really, really well. The dysfunctional behaviors dropped off, the foolishness has dropped off, the running around here and there's dropped off. I now handle things way better as a healed individual that has taken a journey with God. And so for me, whatever that looks like for you, here at the Black Swan Relationship Academy, we do not have a judge and a jury. Okay. If you want the grace to do it the way Vaughn did it, if you want the grace to wait it out and God atrophy your sex drive, and you can just book Coach Yvonne, because that grace, she can impart that to you. Maybe she can't, but she can hold your hand through whatever your journey is. If you want to explore, figure out with a man, without one, whichever path you want to take, if you're happy for it to be messy and get some guidance, but Coach Unique. And we're going to hear from Coach Nadine about how she handled her journey thereafter. Over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I was kind of in two extremes, because after that relationship, I went to church and I decided, okay, no date, I'm just gonna focus God and me, God and me. But the thing was, I couldn't understand, because I was taught by my mom, like, the first person that you're with, that's your husband, you marry him. And I was like, oh, he's gone, because I walked out. So it was kind of like trying to figure out what people were telling me. And then some people were saying, don't do something in church, but they were actually doing it. So it was like, kind of, oh, you're not supposed to do it. So I was getting all these, I was very confused. So again, decided not to be in a relationship, because this made my life easier. But what I was discovering when I decided to jump back into dating, how I understood, because remember, the context was whoever you were with, whoever you were sexual with, that is going to be your husband. So it's like, my attitude was, whoever I would be with, of course that will be my husband. But I realized the dating world was different, that what my perception of what intimacy was and what I thought was and what was going was different than what other people thought. Like, there was all these terms, friends with benefits, all this stuff, and I didn't understand or know how to navigate, and I didn't really understand it. So I think the best thing to do was, you have to come to a place where you start becoming authentic and accepting and not feeling guilt, and having that discussion with God and just having that journey and not feeling judged. Because when I would talk to people or go to my church group, you could even talk, people were just kind of mums about it. You know what I mean? They wouldn't want to talk about it or say, do this, do this. So personally, I think it's something that you have to kind of feel comfortable with. And there's no judgment, as you said. All of us are here to listen and to listen to you, not judge, have empathy, compassion, and work it through. Because I wish I had that, because it was such a confusing journey for me. And I just didn't understand how dating worked. I was dating as if I was back in my 20s, because that's all I knew, right? And I didn't realize how it changed, and how sex was a big part of it, how you navigate what you did. If someone held my hand outside and did all these public affection, and I was coming, and I was from a domestic abuse, so I thought anything that was of kindness, they must love me, they must care for me, they're going to marry me, not knowing, first of all, men are supposed to do that. Second of all, you shouldn't get a certain, it was just so many different things. So I think, again, with dating after divorce or a long committed relationship, is trying to understand, be authentic. We talk about your sexuality, own your sexuality, not be ashamed, regardless if you are a Christian, like, own it, and know that you have to deal with it and not feel ashamed about it. And sometimes those, to be honest, that's something that's private between you and God and yourself. Like, people, God knows, right? So again, it's not being judged, and do it the way you feel comfortable. For me, I wasn't active for a very long time because I just decided not to date, but it didn't get me anywhere, in a sense of I was running away and not dealing with the problems I needed to deal with, right?
So powerful. So powerful.
I
I mean,
wanna say something.
yeah, of course, go ahead.
Just to add to Nadine, this the owning it and being compassionate with yourself.
Yes.
That's the important piece, because again, I've been through those phases. When I was busy being a mother, one of it was because I'm a Christian, I cannot have someone else, and I went to the extreme as well. I'm now like almost I don't want to say a widow as such, but then there's that thing where when you've been married once, you feel like you're discarded goods. No one else is going to want this. So I chose to be celibate for those reasons. And it wasn't a pure reason that I want to stay. It wasn't anything to do with life itself, just to do with my traumas and what I'd experienced. And we've all been through those phases, like where you go through, what, sod it. This is what we're doing now. I've been through that phase as well. Been through the phase of, okay, you know what, I really want to date intentionally for marriage, and just didn't know how to vet. So it's in all of that, I've learned to be compassionate with myself. I'm not perfect. I cannot hold myself to Jesus standards, because I'm not Jesus. I cannot hold myself to God's standards. I'm not God. And guess what? He actually loves me just the way I am.
Yes.
Because he understands my struggles, he understands my battles, he understands the fact that I am working towards my salvation. And the whole thing that you were saying about being celibate, because sometimes it's almost like I'm going to do this so I can get a reward from God. I'm gonna reward with an amazing husband. I mean, I was celibate till we were married, and the sex wasn't even that good. Sorry. And it's like, so where's my reward then, God? Like, you have to work at this. And the thing is, it's like there's this promise of like, oh my God, it's gonna be so amazing.
Yeah.
But the reality of sex is that it's not always great.
Yes.
But when you communicate, it can work it out, and then it becomes great.
Yeah.
And we leave out that piece. We're just taught that, no, just be celibate, and fireworks are going to happen, and all of this. We see the movies, and like they embrace, and there's sparks flying everywhere. But when you actually experience, you're like,
Okay.
I'm still looking for the sparks, but they don't. I say people around our communities don't really teach us that, you know what, in every relationship, the sparks are not always going to be there, right? You are always going to have an itch, and it's you communicating.
Yes.
Even to, I mean, the reason, I think there was a statistic that was saying that more and more women are cheating more than men, because again, we don't have the vocabulary to say, you know what, babe, I really don't like the way you do it this way. We try and switch it up. And this is where to hold me. This is where let's explore this. Let's explore each other, because it's all the stories that we've put up against the exploration. We have condemned explorations to, if you want to explore, that means you're a lady of the streets. And we have forgotten to say, look, at the end of the day, God created sex, right? God created intimacy. Yeah. It's a godly thing. Anything godly can be taken and be used for evil. But at the end of the day, it's how you then communicate that I want this to be honorable. And as much as I want it to be honorable, that's how I'm going to vet. I'm going to vet and be with someone, and I love people who admit to their struggles.
Yes.
I love people who can say, look, just like what we're doing now, like, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. I want to be married. I want an amazing man that I can say this is my one and only, and I want to be able to wait until marriage. But the way that I'm wired, it's not going to happen. And this is because of sexual trauma. Our bodies were sexually ignited way too early. We didn't get the chance to mature into sexuality. Our bodies, for some of us, it was from the age of 5. A 5-year-old should not know anything about sex. So sometimes the whole gospel of celibacy and purity, you're talking to people who've had a chance to mature into sexuality and haven't had the trauma of the sexual past where it was violated, where it was not consensual. So self-compassion also allows you to accept that part as well. Accept the part that, you know what, I didn't ask my cousin to come to me at 5 years old. I had no clue what she was going to do, but I didn't ask her to do that. So it's that thing of, I have to be compassionate with myself to understand that, yes, as much as I was too young, my body was also taught sexuality early. Then how do I then navigate that in an older age? And I've gone into a community that doesn't really like sex that much, doesn't want to talk about sexuality that much. So how do I then come to terms with that? And I know there's a lot of women who are sexually vibrant, that like sex, and are having to dumb it down because of the communities that we're in. And I think what we are all saying here is there's a space and a time for all of that. Is the self-compassion key, and owning all of it is where we start. And then you have all of us beautiful coaches to then talk to. And because it's that space that we all need of understanding self-compassion and just being able to be yourself fully, because you won't be able to do that in a relationship if you can't even do it with yourself.
You said something really important, Unique, and I just want to buttress that point when you said God created sex. And yes, he did. And in him created sex, guess what? He gave all of us the desire for it. So if he created it and gave us the desire for it, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, we still have a desire for it and a want for it and a need, because we all know the benefits that it does for us. So the fact that we are going to deny ourselves because of whatever our reasons are. And I heard, I think it was Chengi, I think it might have been, telling me about somebody who said they were celibate. And she said to them, I believe something along the lines that anybody can be celibate when there's a drought. Do you get what I mean? If there is
Yeah.
nobody around, we can all be celibate. No, but no, but it's true though, isn't it? You know,
Everyone can fast in the wilderness, you know.
Yes, we can do. Everybody can fast. You know, I like ice cream. Unless I go to the shop, I'm not going to go out and look for it if I don't get up and go. And so it is, you know, with sex, we have the desire for it. We're designed for it. God made it so. But you said again something important. If somebody wakes up something in us that it's not supposed to happen at all, and it does, of course it's going to cause problems down the road. Then does that mean because it causes a problem, then God says, Chengi, unique, Yvonne, sorry, you're not coming in because you did.
I think though you say that and I laugh, but I do believe that that's the messaging. I believe that a lot of people, you know, and yes, we can get into scripture, and this is not what we're trying to do here.
No, it isn't.
You know, but I definitely believe that my sexuality would be my denial into heaven.
Yeah.
I really genuinely believe that. I believe that no matter how my heart was pure towards God and others, no matter how devoted I was to my walk with the Lord, no matter how much I had served and healed and helped and had, my relationship with Christ is very intimate. It's not like, it's got religious in it because unfortunately I was raised within a church context, but it's very intimate. It's very me and him. It's me and him having very real conversations all the time, stuff that I couldn't have with the pastor I have with my father, right? Because there's so much, there's this much of a bandwidth. But until I decided to take my sexuality away from the organized religious organization that we call the church, because there is the Church of Jesus Christ, and then there's the organized religious space where many of us exist. When I decided to take that conversation out of the hand of those people, and I wanted to say something as well with Yvonne's story that I actually forgot, but I've just been reminded. When Yvonne got saved, she got saved into a beautiful community.
Yes.
Yeah.
When she was getting divorced, she was getting caught up in a beautiful community. And I want to say something about community here. Whereas when I got divorced, I was exiled from that beautiful community. Because you see, and this is a lot of stuff that we don't take into consideration is when I was, you know, we were the young pastors rising up in the church. We were the young ministers. We were the preachers, teachers. I was in the clergy, you know, when my divorce happened, and people took it personally and I was exiled. You know, people started to even think of me as a thief. I had somebody who had lent us some money as a couple, and the way they treated me afterwards is as if I've run off with their money. Like my character, everything about you, people just begin to doubt everything you are. You're still the same person. You cried with these people, you prayed with these people, you were up with these people, you were in the hospital with these people, you held their hands during their worst hours. But the moment you get divorced, they genuinely believe that your character is now zero. You are now a leper or some
leprosy filled.
You are just it's a horrible way that the church treats people that have made the decision to walk away from a situation. And there's very little compassion. The church is okay to accept it once it's happened and you come in as a divorced person. Yes, you will get compassion. But if you are our leaders, if you are people that we have known in the church, we don't know how to deal with you anymore. You've let Satan in. You know, you are full of sin. You are lying to us. We have this thing. So I was really exiled into having to work it out, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because what that did is allowed me to take my sexuality away from these people who were so happy to drop me at the drop of a hat, and not everyone, but the majority, and put it in God's hands. And that is when I found true liberty and freedom. And I would tell you stories about my escapades where I felt the presence of the Most High God whilst I was misbehaving. And I always say to people that it was when I stopped being a church girl, when I stopped trying to be holier than thou and started accepting my humanity, my brokenness, and the reason why Christ had to die for me too. Because prior to that, he had to die for everybody because I'm a good little virgin girl that does everything right and ticks every box, and yeah, he died for me too. Yeah. But it's only when I was in this place of unraveling and this kind of savage place that I would be going to places I got no business going, to be with people I got no business being with, a person I've got no business going to be with, in very low value way behaviors.
Yeah.
And I would feel his presence all the way. And I'd be like, can you just stay home? I don't want you here. But I would feel the presence of this big bodyguard. Like I had two, one on the left and one on the right. And I would feel, I'd never felt the presence and the protection of God when I was in church. Never. I never felt the presence and the protection of God when I was being a good girl in church. Never. I'm out here on these streets, no church, no pastor. I am the reject. I'm on here on these streets, and there's this insane presence. I would go to parties, and obviously I was naive as hell, and men would bring me drinks because they're trying to get with me at the end of the night. Do you know I'd get sober as the night went on? Literally, I would get the more drinks I drank, the more sober I became. God just really just sent forth his grace and was like, look, I'll hold space for you while we together figure it out. I never felt condemnation. I never felt judgment. I have never felt so much acceptance from the Most High than when I was in my mind at my worst. And so for me, it's not something I'm prepared to sacrifice for the organization again. This is something that I desire and long to and practice as hard as I can to live in sexual purity and in the fear of the Lord. But if I mess up, if I meet somebody and things go down, I'm not looking for approval I'm gonna go to the person I went to and there was no one there. And I know that he's gonna have his arms open and he's gonna dust me. I'm gonna start again. Okay. And this is truly, I feel, the experience that has been denied a child of God through our desire to keep things pure. This call has become probably a saving grace for somebody who's stuck in this. We don't talk about it here. We don't deal with that here. Just don't do it. That's it. And if you don't do it, God is going to bring you sweeties and he's going to give you praises and he's going to buy you a new dress and he's going to give you a sweet little husband. So he's going to adore you and take care of you, make sure everything's okay. And some of us are sitting there doing, if I do that, but you're hiding trauma, you're hiding your story, you're hiding your authenticity. And you're probably choosing not to date thinking I'm a good girl, but you're in the wilderness. Like Yvonne was saying, you're fasting in the wilderness and trying to come through like you really have self-control, right? You are fearing relationships because relationships are messy and they pull things out of us and they expose our trauma and expose things that we do need to work on.
Yes.
Relationship trauma can only be worked on within a relationship. And we're sitting there playing church girl. And we don't understand that you will enter, you are more likely to be denied by Christ because he's going to say, hey, you healed in my name. You were at church every week. You didn't have sex. You did all these things, but I don't know you. Because you never let him into those places. You did Christianity for Jesus. You were, I'll be a Christian, Lord. God doesn't want Christians. There's no in the scripture that says, I desire Christians. That label never came from God. He died to give us a relationship with himself. A human to relate to a divine God. And he wants to take your hand and through his word and by his spirit, transform you into his image. And that is a journey that will last a lifetime. But what we think God has ordered is Christians.
Yes.
And as a result, we have this relationship famine in the church, worse than it is in the world. We have more divorces in the church, worse than they are in the world, because we have created a setup where people cannot be authentic. And it's so important that that here at the Black Swan Relationship Academy, we're not a church. But we are women who love God, who have an intimate relationship with God, who desire to serve him. We pray here at the academy more than probably most churches pray. I can pick up the phone at any point of the day, buzz all the coaches, and we will be in full-on prayer in 2 seconds. I don't know women who pray as hard as the women on the screen. I don't know women who read the word as hard. I don't know women who prophesy
Mm.
prolifically as the women on this call. I don't know women who love the Lord, who at a drop of a hat would be like, oh, God is so amazing. I mean, our conversations are laced with God.
Yeah.
But I promise you, you will not find people who are more authentic, more down to earth, more honest, more real. So if you want to go play that game, there's a whole enterprise set up for you. Okay,
Yeah.
called Christianity, it's called churchianity, it's a whole friggin' situation, and it's in abundance. And I'm not cussing people's churches. I love the church, I respect the church, I respect what it's here to do. I'm saying that God will build his church, his ecclesia, and the gates of hell will not prevail. Why would God say that? Because there is the church, then there is the church of Jesus Christ. And, you know, for me, anyone listening to this, because I really feel the Holy Spirit on this, you can run to us because nobody's judging you here.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
No one's judging you for even holding your convictions.
Mm.
You come here and you're like, listen, I'm not doing it until I get married. We're going to stand with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to
We're
hold
gonna
your hand.
coach you through
Yeah.
it.
We're going to coach
Teach
you
you how
through
to
it.
do it.
Yeah, we're
Yes.
going to be like, this is what you do,
Yes.
how you position yourself. You don't have
Hold
to
us
compromise.
accountable.
Yeah.
If you have that grace, and if you are standing in that grace and you have that power and you've sustained it, oh, hallelujah, we're going to pray with you, we're going to hold your hand, we're going to support you. And if you're like, listen, I am here limping, I don't know what I'm doing, we got you too. We
Yes.
got your back. We're going to pray with
Yes.
you. We're going to hold you. We're going to direct you. We're going to give you help. What you're not going to get here is judgment, criticism, and you're not going to, we don't do religion here. You know, what we need for you, what we want in the world are healthy women, healthy emotions, healthy bodies, healthy sex lives, healthy psychology, to create healthy relationships that have healthy children and healthy and happy families. That's our mandate. If you want to be judged or have somebody clap hands for you for being a good girl, that's not our mandate. So what can I say? If anyone wants to say anything else, you better say it, because we're going to wrap it up.
Just the last thing I wanted to say, there's a scripture that tells us all have fallen. All, not just us, but all have fallen. And you know what? If we remember that, then we must also remember, if you fall, there's somebody there to pick you up, put you back on your feet again and help you to go. And if you think that by having sex out of marriage makes it be that you have fallen, then you and God will sort it out and you and God will deal with it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be for a man to say to you and excommunicate you. All that Chengi spoke of when she was in church, I was there with her. I was with her when she was going through all of it. And it's true, the very people who, you know, hold you close in 1 minute can so easily, it's like they did with Jesus. You know, on Palm Sunday, even the donkey thought he was the person they were cheering, because they were, you know, the Messiah, yay, and everyone, Jesus, Jesus. A few days later, kill him. We are fickle as people, you know. So work out your salvation with fear and trembling, and you and God come to a decision. And whatever that decision is, own it and move forward.
Yeah. I love that as well, because the fact that you say we are fickle as people, and the main person that keeps coming back to me, I think we all know David, we all know his lineage, we all know his story, and yet you're still a man after God's own heart, because he dealt with God from his heart, not from his stories, not from his abandonment issues when they left them out in the fields, not from the fact that some of his sons were raping his own daughters. He dealt with God from here. And all of us have stories, but we forget that the Bible on which we base our faith on had worse stories. You know, how do you sleep with a woman, get the husband killed, and then go and marry her? Like, how do you even let your own son rape your own daughter in your same house, and then you continue to live with that? Like so many stories that we could come up with, but then when you really bring them down to a reality scenes, David was dealing with his own trauma. They would leave him out in the fields and actually forget him. Jesse himself forgot, I have a son, I have another son. You know, that's just how abandoned he was. He made the sheep his friends, he made the bears his friends that he killed. But because of his experience of the trauma and being on his own, God saw him fit, to lead and be a king, being a chosen king, whereas Saul was chosen by the people. And which is what I think we do with church. We allow church who are chosen by people to be the one that govern us, whereas David was chosen of God. And it's the ones that are chosen of God that really see the heart of God and are able to experience compassion for people.
Yes.
And more than anything, I think sometimes as Yvonne always say, cut yourself some slack. If you and your heart are towards God, anything else that you do, really, God will always deal with you with grace. And I think that is what we're saying here is there's always grace. I mean, don't go out and do it on purpose, but there's always grace for our fickleness. There's always grace for our imperfections. There's always grace for the ones that really want to know what the issues of their heart are, because out of those issues of your heart, your mouth will speak. So I'm inviting you to Black Swan Relationship Academy to let's work on those issues. So that we can fix them, align them with the word of God, align them with wherever you want to go, so that when you speak, it's from your heart, despite all these other little things that you want to do. Anything that you, because sometimes the need for sex is just a cover up from some emotional trauma that you don't want to deal with. When you're able to open up with a coach, it's not about let's have sexy time. And I know we laugh and we giggle. And in the other video, we're talking about swinging and I was like, make a correction. It's funny, but most of the time it's because of the issues that are in our hearts. It's like it's time for us to find open spaces where we can deal with our issues. Because when we bleed, we're busy bleeding on other people. When we're hurting, we're busy hurting other people. And this is the platform. And I know we've kind of diverted from the whole topic. It feels like a Sunday, right? It feels like we're really having church today. And this is a space where you can really truly be yourself and deal with those issues, so that when you are going into that new relationship, you're speaking from a place of purity. And not just because I want some guy to jump my bones. I want it's no longer because, again, with that whole trauma of sexuality, in my case, it was because I'd never dealt with the fact that, something happened when I was 5, something happened when I was 9, something happened when I was 16, and then again at 21. And you never really deal with those issues, and because you just tell yourself, I just keep attracting these people anyway, so I must be meant to be sexually active. And when the conversations of being a virgin come up in church, you can't have a voice because you didn't have that experience. You didn't have a choice in whether you kept your virginity till you got married. So it's those conversations that I feel really end up leading to the divorce, because we don't deal with ourselves in the first place. Just to bring it back to the topic.
I wanted to also say that even though the topic was dating after divorce, it's interesting how, if you think about the underlining, it's again about feeling guilt of not being the dating after divorce, or what you dealt with divorce, wanting to have sex, not wanting to have sex, everything around it of guilt. Because if we talk about it, even divorce is looked at as, oh my goodness, you have done something wrong. So it's interesting how I feel like everything actually there's a connection to each one of them, because if you think of the dating after divorce, there's a lot of pain, or even in a long-term commitment when it happens, right? It's like dealing with it. So it's, again, owning it, working through with it, working it with God. You know what I mean? If you don't know who God is, like working it with yourself. So again, I feel like it did actually make sense, because it comes up with the same feelings of each part of it and what is associated with those things, if you're dealing with divorce and dating, and it's dealing with yourself. So that also is actually connected.
And that will be all. Have yourself a very, very good day, morning and evening. And like I already said, multiple different times, we are here for you. Whether you want to hold our hand, whether you want to make that call, all the links are in the discovery box. You can join the Black Swan app. We're everywhere. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're saying our hands are reaching out. You don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. But whenever you look at the Black Swan Relationship Academy, our hand will always be out. We will never retract it because you didn't take it. we will be ready and waiting for you. And maybe you're watching this 10 years from the recording. Maybe you're watching it on the day or 6 months later. And maybe the first time you watched it, you were not convinced, but you've come back. There'll be no judgment here. You are always welcome. We're always here for you. And you're going to be met with a lot of love, a lot of grace, a lot of patience, a lot of understanding, and by his grace, a lot of wisdom.
Yes.
Forward to seeing you on our next video. In the meantime, do take care of you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.